Today, we're going to try and uncover the real price of climate change. And I'm not talking about carbon taxes or anything you'd see on a balance sheet. I'm talking about the hidden costs. And to do that, we're going to look at the story of one of the most vulnerable nations on Earth, Bangladesh. So, what is the true cost of climate change? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer is, well, it's incredibly complex, mostly because so many of the most devastating costs are completely hidden from view. Let's start by trying to bring them into the light.
The key idea we need to wrap our heads around is something called climate externalities. Now, it sounds a little academic, I know, but the concept is actually pretty simple. These are the hidden societal costs of, well, pretty much everything. So, for example, when a factory pollutes the air, the price of whatever it's making doesn't include the cost of a farmer's crops failing down the road or a child's asthma treatment nearby. That's the hidden price tag, and it's a massive market failure.
And that brings us to Bangladesh. As a low-lying, really densely populated delta nation, it is on the absolute front line of climate change. For them, this isn't some theoretical problem they'll deal with down the line. It is a daily reality. And that's what makes it such a powerful case study for understanding these hidden costs. Just look at this image. This is the human face of a climate externality. It's not just land falling into a river. It's a home, a farm, a whole community just being washed away. And this isn't some rare, isolated event. River erosion alone forces almost 50,000 people from their homes every single year. That is a staggering, unpriced cost. And the data really lays out the scale of the challenge here. We're talking about rising temperatures, rising sea levels, floods that displaced over 1.5 million people annually, and cyclones that are projected to get almost 30% more intense. You see, it's not just one single threat. It's like a constant multi-front assault. So, how do experts actually calculate all this? Well, they use a pretty simple formula. Risk is a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. So the hazard, that's the event itself, the cyclone or the flood. Exposure is how many people or buildings are sitting in its path. And vulnerability, that's how well they can actually withstand it. And as we're about to see, Bangladesh unfortunately scores really high across the board. And this right here, this is what those hazards actually look like. From the whipping winds of a cyclone to the cracked, dry earth of a drought, these are the events that trigger all of the cascading costs we're about to explore. And remember, they're becoming more frequent and way more severe, which just amplifies that risk equation we just looked at. Okay, so now let's look at how this all builds into what we can call the ripple effect. Because a single climate event doesn't just cause damage and then stop. Oh no, it sends shockwaves through every single part of the economy and society. Let's just take one event, Cyclone Ampon, back in 2020. The immediate direct damage was estimated at a staggering $1.5 billion. But you know what? Even that massive number doesn't come close to capturing the full story. It's really just the first ripple. Here's another ripple. As the seas rise, salt water gets pushed further and further inland, and it gets into the soil. So what's the result? A projected 15.6% loss in major crop yields in coastal regions. See, this isn't about damaged buildings anymore. This is about food security. It's about a farmer's ability to feed their family and a nation's ability to feed its people. This table does a great job of mapping out the entire chain reaction. So climate change hits agriculture. Boom, crop yields go down. Food prices go up. It hits fisheries, changing what can even be farmed. This then directly smacks livelihoods through lost workdays. And finally, it hits public health, leading to a rise in diseases like dengue and cholera. You can just see how it's all connected. This chart really puts some hard numbers on that damage. Over on the left, you see that massive $1.5 billion in infrastructure from Cyclone Ampon. But look at the other bars. $380 million in rice crops just wiped out by floods. Another $150 million in aquaculture, destroyed by that same cyclone. It just goes to show how one event can spread costs across completely different parts of the economy.
But the biggest ripple of all, the ultimate externality, it isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in people. The result of all these compounding pressures is a human tide of displacement and migration.
Every year, an estimated 400,000 people migrate from rural areas to Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka. And get this, for about 70% of them, the reason is climate change. Their land has become unfarmable, their village has been washed away, or their livelihood has just vanished. And this puts this immense pressure on a city that's already struggling with resources, which creates a whole new set of hidden costs in urban areas. And the future? Well, it looks even more challenging.
The projection is that by 2050, rising sea levels alone will displace over 13 million people in the country's coastal regions. I mean, that is a crisis on an almost unimaginable scale, and it's a direct cost of global emissions. So, when you're faced with this overwhelming reality, how does the nation even begin to pay the bill for these externalities? Well, this isn't about accepting defeat. It's about building resilience and finding ways to manage what has become unavoidable. The approach to disaster management really breaks down into these three critical stages. First up is preparedness. That means investing in things like early warning systems and cyclone shelters before the storm hits. Second is response. That's the immediate life-saving work during and right after the event. And third, recovery, the long, difficult process of rebuilding, not just homes and roads, but lives and livelihoods. And Bangladesh is tackling this strategically with some major national plans. They've got a climate change strategy, a national adaptation plan, and the incredibly ambitious Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100. Seriously, this isn't just some 5 or 10-year plan. It's a century-long strategy designed to make the entire Delta prosperous and safe for generations to come. It's basically a blueprint for survival. But here's the fundamental challenge that planners face, a real tension right at the heart of this issue. Do you prioritize short-term economic development to lift people out of poverty right now, even if it comes with environmental costs? Or do you prioritize long-term climate resilience, which requires huge upfront investment that might slow down that immediate growth? There are no easy answers here. So how do you make this hidden price tag visible? Well, you use tools like the polluter pays principle, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You steer public investment toward green projects. You use community-based adaptation, which empowers local villages to design their own solutions that fit their specific needs. And you develop insurance to transfer risk away from the most vulnerable. It's all about building systems that actually account for the true costs.
Ultimately, the crucial point is this: you just cannot separate climate change from economic development. As this quote says, you have to internalize those climate costs. And what that means is building them into every plan, every budget, and every single vision for the future. Because paying to prevent disasters is really the only way to reduce vulnerability in the long run.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty sobering thought. We've just seen the immense, cascading costs of climate change through the lens of one of the world's most vulnerable countries. It really makes you wonder, if this is the bill for just one nation, what in the world is the total bill for our entire planet?